However, a family of 6 from Gaza have applied to live in Britain using this scheme, and a judge has now ruled in their favour. This is not what the scheme was designed to do.
She asked me if we're going to change the law and close the loophole in question 1. I said yes.
This decision is completely wrong. It cannot be allowed to stand. Is the government planning to appeal on any points of law? And if so, which ones?
Has Keir Starmer just committed the most dangerous attack on judicial independence in recent British history? The Lady Chief Justice certainly thinks so, as she takes the unprecedented step of publicly condemning the Prime Minister's comments. Why would a former human rights lawyer deliberately undermine the very institution he spent decades defending? Is this a calculated political move or a dangerous misstep that could threaten the foundations of Britain's democracy? Stay with me as we unpick this extraordinary confrontation.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative government established the Ukraine Family Scheme, and in total, over 200,000 Ukrainians, mostly women, children and the elderly, have found sanctuary in the UK from Putin's war.
Mr. Speaker, let me be clear. I do not agree with the decision. She's right. It's the wrong decision.
Given this crazy decision,
she complains about scripted answers and questions. Her script doesn't allow her to listen to the answer.
That's unfolding right now. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now, back to the video. The journey from human rights defender to judicial critic seems an unlikely trajectory, yet this is precisely the path Keir Starmer has taken. Before his political career, Starmer built his reputation as a steadfast advocate for legal principles and human rights. As Director of Public Prosecutions, he earned respect for upholding the fundamental separation between judicial decisions and political influence, a cornerstone of British democracy that he now appears willing to undermine. What makes this situation truly remarkable isn't just the criticism itself, but the source from which it comes.
I know Labour MPs don't understand much of what they're saying, but the Prime Minister literally wrote a book on the European Convention on Human Rights. New legislation is needed to clarify the right to a family life in Article 8. I'm not talking about what he just said. I know this is a situation where we need to put our national interest before the ECHR.
Baroness Carr, Britain's Lady Chief Justice, has taken the extraordinary step of publicly rebuking the Prime Minister, a move with virtually no precedent in modern British politics. Judges traditionally maintain careful distance from political disputes, making her intervention all the more significant. The controversy centers on a case that, in isolation, might seem relatively straightforward. A Palestinian family from Gaza sought refuge in the UK under the Ukraine Family Scheme, hoping to join relatives already settled here. When their case reached court, a British judge ruled in their favour, applying existing human rights legislation that had previously been approved by Parliament. Rather than accept this legal determination, Starmer declared, "This decision is completely wrong. It cannot be allowed to stand." This statement represents a striking departure from the principles Starmer once championed. Throughout his pre-political career, he consistently defended judicial independence as sacrosanct, a vital check against government overreach and a protection for individual rights. His attempt to shift blame onto the judiciary for simply applying the law as written by Parliament reflects a troubling willingness to sacrifice principle for political convenience. The gravity of this situation cannot be overstated. Baroness Carr described herself as deeply troubled by the Prime Minister's remarks, diplomatic language that barely conceals her alarm at seeing the nation's leader undermine public confidence in the judiciary. Her response represents what one might call a constitutional alarm bell, warning of the dangers when politicians attempt to delegitimize judicial decisions they find politically inconvenient. Perhaps most concerning is the Lady Chief Justice's warning about increased threats to judicial safety. In her rebuke, she connected the dots between inflammatory political rhetoric and tangible risks to those serving in our courts. When leaders characterize judges as opponents rather than essential components of democratic governance, they create an environment where threats against the judiciary can flourish. This represents a dangerous deterioration of the mutual respect that has long characterized relations between Britain's political and judicial branches. What motivates this dramatic shift in Starmer's approach? The answer likely lies in the complex political calculations surrounding immigration policy. By positioning himself as tough on immigration, even at the expense of judicial independence, Starmer appears to be courting voters concerned about border control. This political strategy, however, comes with significant costs to institutional integrity. The irony here is inescapable. A former human rights lawyer who once argued passionately for the protection of vulnerable people and the sanctity of legal principles now criticizes judges for applying those very principles. The transformation is so complete that it has prompted Baroness Carr to break with centuries of tradition to deliver her public rebuke. This clash represents more than just a disagreement over a single case. It highlights a fundamental tension between political expediency and constitutional principle. By suggesting that judicial decisions should bend to political will, Starmer undermines the very system he spent decades defending. His willingness to contradict his professional background for apparent political gain raises profound questions about his commitment to the values he once espoused. The dangers here extend beyond immediate political considerations. When leaders attack judicial independence, they chip away at public confidence in the rule of law itself. Each criticism of a judge for simply applying established legal principles creates cracks in the foundation of our democratic system. The judiciary's ability to function as an independent arbiter depends on public trust. Trust that is eroded when political figures suggest judges are somehow acting improperly by fulfilling their constitutional role. What we're witnessing transcends mere political theatre. The foundations of Britain's democratic system are genuinely at risk as this unprecedented confrontation unfolds, with the judiciary's essential role as a check on executive power under threat. Starmer's transformation from a champion of human rights principles to someone who publicly undermines judicial authority should alarm anyone who values constitutional balance. His willingness to criticize judges appears increasingly calculated to appease anti-immigration sentiment rather than uphold legal principles he once defended. The long-term consequences could be devastating: eroded public trust in the justice system, compromised judicial independence, and the dangerous precedent of courts becoming political pawns in partisan games.